What's going on?
Good to see ya.
Ooh,
You got him. Hey,
I
Cam.
tried adding Cam and it said unable to join. Let's try that one again.
I see him.
I'm here.
Oh, I don't see him. You're invisible to me.
Uh-oh.
That's all right. I have a picture in my head of what you look like, and I'll just work off of that.
Should I hit a button or something? Can you see me, Chase?
It's probably my buttons are wrong or something like that. I wouldn't stress too much.
Yeah, I can see you, Cam.
Cool. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
Good to finally see you.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Chase, why don't you go ahead and kick us off since I'm flying blind here.
I can't believe you can't see him.
I feel like you guys are both pulling a hoax on me right now. Is it because I brought my friend?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you everyone for that's tuning in right now, and of course, thank you, Cam, for sitting down, taking time out of your busy schedule, sit down and talk with us about Land Cruisers and your history with Land Cruisers, and of course, the amazing builds that you're a part of, and the insane motors you're turning out right now. So, we're really excited to sit down and talk with you. So we kind of like to start out the interviews by asking, kind of your background and kind of how you found your way into the world of Land Cruisers.
We kind of accidentally got into it. My truck, my dad actually bought it new after he had a Jeep Cherokee that flipped over, and he wanted something a little sturdier. So we were introduced to it. I think I was 9 and my brother was 6. And then we weren't a Land Cruiser family necessarily. We had one. And then I bought it from him, I guess 15, 20 years ago, just to have a cheap vehicle. And that's when I drank the Kool-Aid and joined the cult, so to speak. My brother had bought an 80 series, and I had a truck and needed something with a little more room. And I bought the 60 from him, and then it's downhill from there. So
Nice. So, the of the Land Cruisers you own, do you have any kind of favorite modifications that you've done, or?
on this one, so I also have a 100 series that's bone stock. I bought it just as a beater and have done almost no maintenance to it unless it needed it, like the timing belt and the radiator and some brakes. And it's got like 300 something thousand miles, and my son's about to inherit it. My wife has a stock LX 470, and then I've got a 60 that's kind of a Franken truck of sorts. It's got a GM. It's got a 5.3 LS with the auto. We did that 8 or 9 years ago, and then a few years after that, we cut the 80 suspension out of a donor and glued it to the 60 frame. So that's its latest iteration. So kind of the total package is my favorite modification to it, for sure.
Nice.
I remember being pretty inspired by that build thread just because I remember seeing photos of stuff being broken down in a driveway.
Right.
And being pretty impressed that that could seemingly go down.
It was like a third world country in our driveway and carport. Our neighbors were very forgiving. So have to have good neighbors to do that, for sure.
This is true. So, what's your background exactly? How did you kind of get the confidence to take on that build on your 60?
So really the whole reason I got into ever working on them, because I was not a car person. I'd maybe changed some spark plugs, bled some brakes on a motorcycle, that kind of thing. Maybe changed the oil. I know I spilled oil by leaving the oil filter off at least a couple times. And then I think maybe I changed the belts on my 60 and rotated the tires, and that was about it. And then at the time, there was a shop in Atlanta, Urban Land Cruisers, and I was going to take my truck there. And in the middle of that, their shop went south, and they disappeared with a big deposit for a new motor and all kinds of stuff. And we ended up learning how to do the stuff on our own. And then half a year later, some guys that went on the form ACC came to help them out and turn it around, and I ended up getting my motor. But I learned how to do all this stuff. Like, we did the H55 conversion, put a lift on, we're swapping diffs out and stuff. And we probably could have done the motor too, but they had it and they were ready. So that's kind of where that started. And actually, that is where the high performance 2F came from, because I learned that they were having Jim C build their motors. And so then I started talking to him once things went south, but he told me to just wait it out. And that was such a nice motor that really changed how I thought about the 2F. It'd be another 10 or so years later that we started doing it for fun. But so that's how we definitely got started working on them. And I haven't taken it to anyone since. I mean, we've just learned how to do it all in the carport, in the driveway, for sure. And,
well,
met a great community locally, and then regionally, and then nationally. So it's truly a cult, so to speak, or something.
Exactly.
Speaking to a little bit of that, I've seen some of the threads that you have on Mud about some of the trips that you've gone on with some of the people that I think you've met along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Any memorable moments that you can share with us, or trips that you can kind of talk about that you've done?
Oh, wow. There's been several. So I've done several regional trips. Like G-Smitter, back when it was at Teleco, went to that a couple times. A few things with the Cottonland Club and the Razorback Club here in Arkansas. They both hold events in Arkansas. And then one year, I was like, I want to go do the Rubicon. And I was like, I don't know if my truck can really make it, but I saw there was a wagon run, and they said the minimum requirements were like a locker and 33s. And I was like, okay, I can pull that off. And then added some sliders and managed to get front and rear bumpers in time.
Nice.
But we had such a great time. And then from there, we met Cruiser Drew, Andy Pollock, who leads the wagon run, or used to lead it. Now it's good friend Steve. But I met Andy, another guy named Tom out there, and all the guys from NorCal, and they started inviting me on their trip. So I flew out to Moab, and they picked me up, and we went and did the Hole in the Rock Trail, which is super special. And then I started driving my truck out to meet them, and we had a few. I mean, we came up with all kind of words. We had this chart of epicosity or awesomosity. I have to get owner to explain it, but we had this chart to describe which dimension of fun we were having, because it became so unreal, these experiences we were having on this trip. But yeah, the best ones, definitely. We had a trip to Jarbidge, Nevada. That one was 700 miles across the state, which is just continuous basin and range. I think it's either 7 or 11 mountain ranges. We somehow covered like 700 miles of that.
Wow.
That was awesome. And I had just done the LS swap right before that, and did not have any interstate test miles other than like 2 counties over, just with work. And so that was fun, getting to learn all the new noises it made and wondering if those were good or bad or otherwise. But that was a lot of fun. And then another really special one was another time at the Hole in the Rock where this trip was just surreal. This one's probably one of the best threads we had going, but we just had a series of events that we just would literally imagine things happening and then they came true. I don't know if we can go into it all here, but that one was crazy. And then another one, which was probably the latest trip, which kind of started this latest venture or this latest chapter of my life, was we went to New Mexico. Owner, Nolan, and a bunch of other guys kind of in our local area and a few people from out of town. But we went to New Mexico in January, and that's where famously found an alien on the side of the road. And the rest I don't know if we can go into. I don't know if you guys have the clearance or not, but that trip it's just one of those things that you can't plan out. You just have to go out and it just happens. So that was a very special trip for sure. So I'm looking for the next one now.
That kind of was after that trip, didn't you, or right before that trip, didn't you kind of switch into full-time Land Cruisers?
Yeah, so I was an engineer. I was at an architecture engineering firm. I was doing HVAC engineering, energy analysis, energy usage, savings, that kind of thing. And I was looking at as I was moving up, and I was 10 years older than most of the people at my rank or whatever, because it was a second or third or fourth career for me. And I liked it a lot. I loved it. But I was looking at the people above me. I was like, these guys do not look like they're enjoying life. I don't know if I want to keep going in that direction or like now's the time to bail and do something else. And I really didn't know what I was going to do exactly, but a few things happened where I was just like, yeah, it's time. And then I had one side Land Cruiser job that I was just going to do for fun on the side in my carport. And then Nolan actually sent me a LS swap. And I was like, okay, well, that's 2 jobs. And I lined up some construction work if I needed something to fall back on. And I was like, all right, well, let's just do it. And I took the last paycheck and enclosed my carport into a garage. But after I put in my notice, I kind of used this trip as an excuse. I said I was quitting so I could go EAFing with my friends for the internet. So it made for a better storyline than what really happened. But yeah, for sure.
And look at where you're at now.
I know. It's crazy. I could not have imagined. I was just trying to do some kind of job I can do until retirement and then maybe into retirement. So
that's an awesome story. It's a brave jump, but I'm glad you did it.
Yeah, same. Very, very. If I knew how much work it was, I probably would not have. Just about everything I've done, every truck project. If I knew how much work it was, I probably would have just bought an 80 series or something else, or just. But looking back, it was so worth it for sure. I feel very fortunate with the opportunities I've had. So
it's been really fun to watch the journey and the growth. So
I appreciate it.
It's been fantastic.
We try and have fun every day. So otherwise, we would just go back to our regular jobs. So
right. So that ties in perfectly to kind of switch gears, actually focus more some questions on Mosley Motors. So can you tell us how? Well, you kind of told us how it became to be, but how can you tell us, about the first performance motor variant you built with the 2F? Kind of why you chose that platform, and
yeah. So when I had my truck, it had a Gem C motor and carburetor, best running vehicle 2F, whatever ever. And then I'd had that a couple years, and I saw somebody selling a TBI, an affordable fuel injection kit on Mud for like half price or something. And I bought that and put it on, and it had a few benefits, and I really enjoyed that. And I'm trying to remember how this all fit together. So back then, Nolan, I keep mentioning Nolan, 89 and older for those listening. He was a drug dealer, a drug rep, and he had Memphis on his stop, and we had a local cruiser club, and he would stop in, and he had his Blue 60. I was trying to tell him, I think, to put a high performance motor and do the fuel injection, and I helped him with that. And then he never did the motor. He ended up getting another rebuilt engine that was just a stock build, but he did do fuel injection. And then fast forward a few years, I'd done a couple of jobs, and then we had one, and his truck had an F motor with some problems. And it turned out it needed a full rebuild. And in digging into it, it was really better just to put a 2F in there. And I called Gem C and bought some time from him and got the recipe and some how-tos and some advice and built the first motor. And then we kind of saw things we liked and didn't like and made a few changes, just minor things here and there. And kind of been doing that since. So
that's cool. So how? So I guess, have the motors evolved a lot over time? Like, how did that first generation one compare to maybe the ones you're doing now?
Honestly, not really that much. At the time, we were focused on using cheap quality, or not cheap, but inexpensive but quality generic parts like U.S. piston manufacturers, or gear manufacturers for like the timing gears. And right when we were getting in there is like when the time that all of those parts had already dried up and the only things you could find were on eBay. So we had to start using all Toyota parts. And slowly we just kind of found all the parts that we could still buy and started using more new parts. And then performance-wise, there haven't really been any major changes. We just kind of played with compression ratio and the cams and things like that. Well, for our normal builds, then we've had a few where we've used some really, really fancy pistons and connecting rods that like double the cost of the motor almost. But
oh, wow.
So that's interesting. So, but yeah.
So let's say somebody needs a new motor in one of their Land Cruisers. Why would you encourage them to maybe do one of these 2F performance motors over, say, like an LS swap? I mean, I think you've kind of seen both sides of it. But how would you steer somebody one way or the other?
In a 60, I'm not going to talk you out of an LS swap. I have one and I like it, and I don't feel guilty about it or bad about it. And I had a 2F in mind for a long time. It was kind of funny. Not long after I put the 2F, or I had it put in, less than a year later, there was a local guy, Marco, who he's actually how I got into engineering, because I was not an engineer at the time, but he was doing an LS swap. And I was so proud of my powerful 2F. And I went over to his house to check out his new swap, and he let me drive it. And I was just like, what is this? And it would be another 5 or 6 years before I did that to my truck. But so I don't ever try and talk anybody into doing that in a 60. In a 40, though, I feel like an LS is kind of overkill. The truck's not really built to have that much power. I mean, in a straight line, it'll do it, but, you know, stopping and turning and stuff, it's a little overkill. So for 40s and classic trucks where you really want to have something original looking, I think it's a great option. And for most of us, it's probably the last engine that truck's going to see if we keep it in that same form and take care of it. So might as well make a nice one.
So when you started out with trying to work on some of these high performance 2Fs, what were you guys starting out by targeting? Was it just trying to increase the power? Was it trying to bring that power band higher up in the RPM range, or what were the goals initially?
Really just more power. I remember mine, it just had power all the way to red line and a little bit past it. And then that first one I remember telling people, and nobody believed me, how powerful it was, which sounds hilarious, right? But in my 60, going home from these events, like with my brother and friends, they mostly had 80s. And by the time you put armor on them, and even with 33s, it kind of messes up the shifting of the transmission. They lose a lot of power. And I could just, since we're in Memphis, we have to take the interstate to get to anywhere cool. And so going back on the interstate, I would pass them going up these hills and just pull away from them, which is funny because you think an 80 has a lot more power. But so anyway, I was just trying to recreate my memory of this motor that I no longer had access to, or had no idea if my memories were even accurate of how powerful it really was. But we just wanted to kind of get some more of that. So we figured we're already in there building it. Why not do it a little bit better? Because you're already doing all the work, buying all the parts. Why not just do a little bit more? So that's what we did.
So what kind of, someone just asked, what kind of numbers are your high performance 2Fs putting out?
So we'll just say the numbers they don't sound impressive. And while we don't know, at this particular dyno that we dynoed one, we borrowed a local FJ60. Admittedly, it's a 120 or 40,000 mile engine, wasn't factory fresh, but it ran great, had a recent tune-up, was probably better than your average cruiser driving down the road. Didn't seem to be down on power or anything. But so his truck at the wheel dyno made 68 horsepower, and I don't remember the torque, but ours went from 68 to like 120. And the torque, it made more torque, but where the stock torque dropped off at like 2,000 RPMs, ours kept climbing and then stayed flat all the way. It never dropped below the stock torque until like red line or a little bit past it. So wow. I don't recommend cruising down the interstate at 4,500 RPMs, but I know Nolan saw that on a daily basis, a couple of times a day for sure.
Is he your test mule for the engines?
Sometimes. So he is everywhere. We don't understand how he does it. He has like 15, 20 social media accounts and stays on top of everything. And he has intel on everybody at all times, and he knows what's going on. And so he has a way of finding people looking for cool projects. And that's how we did the first one was he needed a rebuild. And I'm like, okay, well, and I do this a lot where I don't know how something's going to turn out, so I use the customer as an experiment, and maybe I don't tell them. And then that way, if it's good, I might tell them, or if it's not, I'm kind of kidding, but I kind of use it as a chance to experiment and see what works and doesn't, because otherwise you can't do that to your own stuff. You'd run out of money and time to do it. So having customers that need this is great. So that's kind of how we've done it. It's just, we kind of started one place and just slowly attracted more people looking for more of that interesting stuff. So I don't really know how to explain how we got there, but that's how we did. So
we've got a couple of questions about
the
motors themselves that people are posting up. So with these performance motors, what kind of mileage or have you had any high mileage motors that have so far on these new builds? I guess
no, because I mean, I'm only a few years into this, so that's the big worry for me, right? Is that I don't want to start building a bunch of motors and then they all have problems. But so I mean, it's the 2F. I don't feel like we're doing anything to them that affects the longevity. We are doing some balancing to them and balancing the crank and the rotating assembly, getting all the pistons and rod weights matched and the flywheel. So it should have, it should be a little better than factory spec. So it really shouldn't see any less than factory. And if you run EFI on it and you're not going to flood it with gasoline every time you start it and have a carb that gets nasty, it's going to last a lot longer. I mean, it's by no means a modern engine, but modern engines just last so much longer. A lot of that's due to fuel injection. So I always recommend that as well.
It was interesting. I did a lot of research on the 2F variations over the years from like 75 to 87. And it was interesting. It was interesting to see how much, as they moved into the 60 series, how much, quote unquote, more refined they were in terms of just taking the balancing into a little bit more consideration, where a later 2F might be off like an ounce or so, whereas the earlier ones, I don't think that there was much consideration for that, just from the amount of information I was able to find, and a lot of it came from Mud via Jim C. So I think he's probably got some of the most comprehensive information on F and 2F rebuilds on the web right now that I was able to find.
For sure. Yes, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. They're all very similar, but there's 3 or 4 different kind of age ranges of those. Just little minor changes here and there. So
are you guys doing any upgrades to any kind of oiling or anything along those lines?
No. With the 2Fs, they're all about the same. I don't really see anything to do to those. I've built one, what everybody calls the F&a-half, which is the F that's built like the 2F. But we, as a policy, don't build the F motor, especially the earlier one. But
yeah, they have that bad oil bypass oiling system,
and the one I've taken apart, it had this, I wasn't real familiar. It used a different method of bearing thickness. It used these weird shims or something. And I didn't understand it and know where to get the parts, and had no way to know you're even buying quality parts. It's just kind of unbranded tractor stuff is the only options for those.
Yeah.
But,
so I guess it kind of ties into the next thing I was thinking of about eking out, more performance. Do you feel like there is more power to get, or are you starting to get into the territory of now you're really going to start decreasing the potential longevity of these
I think
motors?
I mean, there's always a possibility you could get a little more. I think to get more, you have to raise the compression. and that's when you start running into longevity issues and uh, the 2F head. If you get it where it's pinging or knocking, you know, detonation problems, and those are prone to cracking, especially if they're mistreated. So, I don't know. It's a possibility. Like we were asking earlier about the power. So this one, let's say it had 120 horsepower. We were just kind of guesstimating how much loss, or what that meant at the crank, right? And we were kind of guessing it somewhere in the 180 to 200 horsepower. But we don't want to. We want to try and be conservative, but I saw where Joey at Wits End did a dyno of a turbo truck, a supercharged truck, and a stock truck. And it wasn't all-wheel dyno, but that truck made like 124 horsepower. So we weren't that far off from an old 80, you know, with admittedly some miles on it. So, but it does kind of show you, I mean, there are real gains to be made on those engines, you know, that are totally worth doing.
Someone once told me that, you know, an engine has a finite amount of horsepower over its lifespan, and you can spread that out nice and smooth and evenly across the whole lifespan, or you can make it in a very, very, very short period of time.
We did my machine shop. I think you'd asked about a turbo 3FE in our pre-show discussions, but they were when we first started doing the 2F, they were really excited because they don't have a lot of people looking to improve the performance, so they get excited when you come in looking to do that. But they were talking about a turbo, and it would be cool to have a turbo that just comes on really strong in the low end and is controlled so that as you get to the higher RPMs, it pulls back and can't self-destruct. And I always thought that might be fun to explore, but I think if you definitely chase horsepower by RPM on these, there's definitely a limit on the 2F. So
it's a lot of weight to keep rotating and moving around in that rotating
for sure.
assembly.
And if you look at a 1FZ, the construction, I mean, it's just more main bearing caps. There's 7 instead of just the 4. So everything's better supported, and the crank's actually much heavier in a 1FZ, but it's so much smoother. And those, when you tear them down, they can have 300,000 miles and look not new, but better than a 100,000 mile 2F per se.
So are we going to see a turbo 2F manifold for one of these?
So there is, not for me, there is, forgive me for not remembering his Instagram handle. I think it's Work Turbochargers.
Okay.
He is working on a 2F turbo setup. Look that up. That's going to be really cool.
Yeah, let's check that out. That sounds crazy.
Yeah.
I was reading through all the 2F stuff for something a week or two ago, and I did come across, because a lot of the performance gain kind of conversations or mud threads about 2Fs, that came up that there was originally a South African company that had a 2F turbo setup.
Interesting.
I couldn't remember the name of it, but I'll try and pull up the thread, maybe shoot it over to you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's talk about a 1FZ. What's this crazy 1FZ build that you've been kind of showing some photos of? It looks like you've got a lot of stuff going on to it and a lot of kind of custom work put into it.
Yeah, well, it's right here. This is probably the coolest thing I've ever been involved with. See, maybe I can turn this around. Yeah, check this guy out up here. But
Such
yeah,
awesome,
so,
Sonny.
this guy, we're so excited about this. So we rebuilt this. It's got higher compression pistons, or 10-to-1. which the 1FZ is higher compression anyway. And then we put some mild cams in it. Who was that? From Snyder. They said they were popular with a stock racing class in the Middle East. So I was like, all right, that sounds perfect. So, but yeah, this thing. So this is our first. That was our. We have. Oops, hang on. Let's see. Built. Not a ton of 1FZs. I have built a stock one before this one. And then this one, and then another one like this, but without the cams, that went to Midwest Expedition Outfitters in Tulsa. They put one in a customer's truck, said it was great. But yeah, so we're actually very close to starting it up. So we're excited to see how that does.
Yeah, that build thread for this rig has been amazing. It seems like you mentioned doing whack-a-mole. It seems like getting that FZ in there really clean has been a real engineering challenge to make it look nice.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
functional.
So when we first started, this truck, I think the scope was nowhere near what it has evolved into. Like, quick and dirty are not the right words, but we had just imagined, oh yeah, all these FJ companies done a bunch of these. We've seen a few threads on mud. It'll be easy. There'll be some. It's an engine swap. We're putting an engine in. It's kind of like a building, like from engineering, where you got structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. You got to make sure you do all those things. And then, yeah, once we got in there and put it in there, we're like, yeah, this thing fits, but these things over here are really close, and we can probably make it work, but it looks like it looks real crowded. So we started coming up with all these wild ideas, and it kind of evolved into just keep going until I don't want to use the word perfect, but just make it look like it's supposed to be there. And I think we're there, so we're excited.
Yeah, I mean the work is beautiful. It's
thank you.
kind of mind blowing the amount of work that's gone into it.
I know, and this is a first for us to have the freedom to do that. So, usually in a build, you have to be real budget conscious, but we haven't had that restriction here, so it's given us the opportunity to really take the time. And if we got to do something 2 times or 3 times or even 4 times on a couple pieces, we'll do it because that's what it needs. So,
yeah, I'm guessing, is this going to be the last FZ in a 40 series then for?
No, there's going to be more. We've got a stroker 1FZ. I'm not going to really talk about that too much. Well, this truck, I don't want to. You're not going to upstage this truck, but we're not. We have the parts for that one, but we haven't started doing any real work on that yet. But we got one of those in the works, maybe another 1 or 2 of those. But I think you'll definitely see more, especially people that can find carb manifolds, because the Sniper, the fuel injection really looks cool in an old truck versus a 3FE or 1FZ fuel injection. It works awesome. Like, don't get me wrong, that's better than a Sniper, but it just looks out of place in an old truck. So,
yeah, I mean, I really like how you incorporated the factory air cleaner.
Yeah. And all of these decisions is like they evolved along the way. We just followed the trail of coincidences and good stuff, and things just appeared like, hey, you should go here. I should go here. And like, yes, you should. So I had that air cleaner actually from the first 2F truck. The first 2F I built, it came off of that F motor and had been up in my garage. It was like army green, had like 10 different colors and a lifetime of battle scars and stuff. So it got repurposed for this truck, and it's perfect on there. So
Keep talking about what you guys can see, because I'm just imagining it on my side over here.
there's aliens and Elvis. Elvis is back here. He's sitting in the truck, actually.
Chase, is that true? Is that true?
I cannot confirm or deny it.
I do remember from that build thread that you guys were coming up with really creative ways to solve. I think it was a space issue with the brake master cylinder, and you did like a remote reservoir with a remote mounting with a slave cylinder. Is that right?
Yeah. So this one, so we were looking at, so on the earlier 40s that have a support rib on the firewall. See if I can, this support rib right here, it makes spacing a brake booster, it makes it stick really far out. I don't know if that made sense or turning the camera. And so it put the brake booster and the master cylinder all up in the sniper's business. And we were looking for different ways to make room. And we kind of had it, but then we came across this remote hydro boost system, which is used in like rock buggies, hot rods, just things like that, where they don't have a place to put it on the firewall necessarily. And then this truck doesn't have heat or AC, so normally where you'd have that fan or blower, we don't have anything over there. And so it kind of looks cool, and it visually takes up some space over there, and we're like, hey, let's just put this over there. It doesn't make any sense, but it looks cool, and it solves this problem. And the brake master on the truck is the exact same bolt pattern as the clutch master, so we just got a second clutch master that operates the slave, which pushes on the brake booster. So yeah, we don't know how it works yet either. So this is we got this hot rod truck, and we don't know if the brakes work. So that's gonna be interesting.
10 out of 10 for visual beautification. Functionality, we're figuring out where the scale is going to fall.
Test drive with maybe a racing helmet on.
Right.
That's funny.
There were a couple questions about your our operators standing by right now. If somebody wants to order one of these high performance 2F.
No, and I mean, so that's a good point. So, those things, we have so many inquiries for those that we have to turn like 99% of the people away, because we ended up with the situation where we had this wait list that you add in some delays, and this thing, the wait soon turns to infinity. And so we quit taking orders, unfortunately, but all, for the greater good, really. But so we don't really have an open on those. We do, if we get, or somebody wants to do a stroker motor or something, we definitely can't say no to something that's fun and custom and has a long wait time anyway. So it very well could be that's all we're doing before too long, is just the off the wall stuff. But there's a lot of other great shops out there doing engine rebuilds that we do refer people to. But so hope that wasn't a buzzkill.
I could have just put that, I guess, at the bottom of the notes for this one.
But we are taking a few, especially now that I've got Drew here. I've got a great tech, mechanic, whatever you call him, partner in crime. So we can do some installs now, whereas I could never get to doing any work because I'm not a mechanic, but I would try and take projects on and would just never get to them. It was real hard. not good. Anyway, so we do take a few, where we do a full turnkey service. So I don't want to completely lose hope there.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like you posted somewhat recently that you're looking for more people to kind of join
Yeah,
the
so
quest.
there you go. So we definitely could build some more motors if we get some more people interested in building them. That's definitely a possibility. So that's where we'd like to also go next, is get some more professionals working here. We have got another guy, Rob, that helps us, and everybody that works here kind of already had a professional job, so to speak. I was an engineer. I actually had a friend that was a cardiologist, and he was furloughed during COVID, and he was doing some work on a pig we had in here. And then Rob is like an IT engineer, and Drew is a helicopter mechanic. So we got all these people that are way overqualified to call ourselves mechanics, but that's what we're looking to do, is have some more high quality people where we just have a group of professionals doing this stuff. So we're definitely looking for more people.
So we know that there's demand with the 2F high performance motors. Tell us what you have in store for the 3FE.
I feel like that was a personal comment.
There's only one person I know who would have a 3FE for life back tattoo, and it's probably Chase.
Do you have one? Is it like
I do.
Tupac?
Oh, I thought you meant does he actually have the
Do
tattoo?
you have it on your chest like a?
It's a big one, so it's taking it in stages. It's gonna take a while. Wife is not too happy about it.
We've built a couple of those. They kind of do the same things we do with the 2F. If you have the factory computer, which most people do, they don't like having a more aggressive cam, and they'll have some idle problems. So you kind of can't do as much. And I mean, a performance 2F is going to make more than a 3FE, because it's just a stroker 3FE basically, because it's just a longer stroke. But yeah, you can do the exact same things. We did do one for a local guy, so we got to drive it, which was great. And he put a H55 in there, which frees up a ton of power. So he had a great solid motor in his truck. That really helped it out.
I'm kind of hoping I could get you to do a performance head for my 3FE like Nolan, but
well, let's
we'll
talk
see if
about.
I can pull it off.
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta eke out as much power as I can without going too crazy.
For sure.
So you work on, you have the 2F that hopped up. You do some work on the 3FE potentially, and now you have experience with the FZ. Is there a Toyota motor that you haven't gotten to work on yet that you would really like to?
I really thought I would want to work on the 2UZ, build some of those. Somebody told me you can't get the short blocks anymore. I have no idea if that's true or not, but if so, that would at least indicate a need to rebuild them, even if there's no performance. But I started looking around, and there's almost no performance parts market. There's really not any suppliers for that. There's a bunch of dead links, the old stroker and performance stuff, but they don't.
Oh.
They don't. It doesn't look like they're currently offered by anybody. There's some of the stuff from the 1UZ that I think can carry over. But I would like to get into those and the 1FZ, but also the 2UZ, and get into putting those into older trucks like the 60s and 40s, and keeping the factory EFI, but using the aftermarket computer to control them, because there you can actually unlock some power by switching to an aftermarket engine management system. So I'd like to get into that because then you can run the manual transmission and you're not limited by a lot of the Toyota specific requirements. So
Yeah, it seems like, getting into the FZ and UZ families, it really, well, maybe it used to, but it really opens you up to a vast world of insane performance, possibilities.
yeah, I mean, so the 1FZ, if you do the right stroker combination, it's a 5.2 liter. And if you looked at the 1FZ and the 100 series, it made the same power as the 2UZ, but at a lower RPM. And so if you aren't worried about the RPM, you could probably make a lot more power. But the stroker, we don't even know how much the stroker power is going to make, but that has a possibility of being real fun and might be a great, somebody wanting to stay all Toyota, great motor for a wagon, like a 60 or 55 or something.
So with the 2UZ, a lot of those performance parts maybe missed or are not in production currently. Have you looked into 3URs, the more recent V8? Is it a 5.7 liter V8?
I haven't. So we've been so busy. I've never experienced this in my life where I have no free time. Like, before I was at work and I had everything covered. I had everything, all my jobs. I was on top of whatever. And I had time to surf mud and surf the internet and stay on. And now I have no time. I follow very few build threads just because I can't take any more information coming at me. So I haven't yet. Eventually, for sure. Because those would be great.
I've heard that they're really wide motors on the valve covers, so getting it to physically kind of fit may be a big challenge.
Yeah, it might be. That's part of the fun, is just seeing what you can, once you're able to just cut stuff away, cut it back to the basics and see what you can fit in there. It always opens up a lot of possibilities.
So in addition to, some high performance motor builds, like what else does Mosley Motors offer to the cruiser community?
So we kind of have two or three businesses in one, I guess. Like when I started, originally I thought I was going to sell a few products. I thought that was a lot easier than it was. I just thought people would just show up and want to buy stuff. It turns out people don't. But we stumbled upon the Sniper setup, which was actually on that first motor. We weren't the first ones to put it on a Land Cruiser. I saw a guy on mud, and I'd asked him a few questions. And then a friend actually found an old Downey adapter that has the same base carb pattern, and he did it. And then so I bought like every carburetor adapter that every company. I spent like hundreds, or probably not 1,000, but all my spare money was just buying parts to experiment with, right? So, and then we found the parts, and everything was handmade. And then we started making these rudimentary kits, and people wanted them. And it was the early adopters, the cheap people that wanted to experiment. But then it kind of evolved into supplying a more complete kit and doing that. But that's how all that started, was from a build. And that's how everything we sell now, which we do through the website, almost everything has been a result of finding something that was not a need, that wasn't being met by the other vendors. I don't really compete with anybody on most of the stuff. Most of the stuff is probably a pretty high effort, so it's hard for a lot of the big people to do. But so we have an online, we have a sales side, and then engines is a whole beast. Southeast, and then we've got the shop where we do cool projects like this. We tried to do maintenance for a while. We tried to offer the full Land Cruiser one-stop shop, but that kind of jammed up all our projects, and we had to stop taking that in and just focus on projects and engines. So kind of those three things are where we focus our efforts.
Nice. If you could choose a direction where you could continue to evolve the business with more growth, where would you like to see it go? Which direction would you like to kind of pursue?
So, I mean, I wouldn't mind opening like a small machine shop. There's another local shop in town. I have a great relationship with my local machine shop, and they're great teachers. Like, they like to make sure you understand what's going on. And so, like, we build them. We're not the machine shop. We find all the parts and we take it to them, and we make our machinist job as easy as possible so that all they do is what they do great, and then we do what we do great, and everybody. But I wouldn't mind having some of those capabilities in-house. There's so few machine shops. Memphis used to be a huge racing community, which I was not a part of, even though I saw it. And we had like Comp Cams and Lunati Cams and all these companies. And then they sold and moved out of town, and all the talent left. And there's like no machine shops any left. There's no machine shops left anymore. So I wouldn't mind bringing some of that in-house. I can kind of control the time and the quality and all that kind of stuff. Definitely like to do more of what we're doing. And I wouldn't mind getting into an electric build. I think that would be pretty cool. So if we can manifest one of those here tonight, that would be awesome.
That'd be super cool. It's definitely going to be a growing area in motor swaps.
Yeah, I think I don't dislike them in older trucks, but I think it would be cool in like 100 series, since they're sleeker, more modern, quieter vehicles anyway. I think that would be cool having I was looking at like the Tesla motor swap that Electric GT had. That might be cool, having a 400 horsepower or however much it has, electric motor in your 100, just to zip around town and make people, just smoke other cars at the light. So silently, that would be pretty cool.
I want to see that, because I'm just imagining the older gentleman in the Camaro, or Corvette rather, and he's just sitting there, and then the 100 series just pulls away
silently.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that definitely does seem like maybe a better platform, to larger. It seems like the 40 series, you run into the issue with space for batteries.
Yeah. And on these trucks, I have this, also I like to kind of keep the better, for lack of vibe, the same, for lack of a better. That's why I like the carb manifold on this truck. Even though we got a newer motor, it looks like it belongs there. And sometimes on like, say, like a 40, to me, the electric motor looks kind of out of place. I mean, I love that they're doing it. But I think it'd look more at home in something a little newer. And the 100s are now old enough where you can pick up a donor 100 and cut on it, and it's not as big a deal. So
it's still weird for me to think of 100 being old now, but
I
it's
know.
true.
That's the equivalent of when I bought my 60. That would be the average someone now buying a 100 series. That's where we're at. So, and like I'm about to hand my 100 over to my son, who turned 16 here in a couple months. So
nice. You nervous about that?
a little. Well, I'm nervous for the truck.
Is he
He,
excited about a Land Cruiser being his first car?
yeah, he actually asked if he could have the 60, but I was like, no, it's not, it's too sketchy for a first time kid like him. But the 100 would be perfect. It's a much safer vehicle, easier to. Kids these days don't grow up having to learn how to do as much mechanical stuff. Learn how to ride a motorcycle and the brakes go out while you're going, or the clutch quits working. They don't know how to overcome all these things you need to drive a old vehicle. So definitely would rather put them in the 100 series.
For sure.
There was a really good question that came through about what would your dream Land Cruiser and motor kind of combination be if you could build something or have
Oh
something
man,
for you? What would that be look like?
I don't know. See, I have this. That's the thing is I don't have a bunch of vehicles because I don't like to maintain them, and the more I have, it's like the more they just instead of fixing one, I just drive a different one, so they end up all broken. So it's hard to pick a V1 truck. There's a few times where I'd thought about putting a 1FZ in my 60, because I like the power I have in the 5.3. I would love to have more, obviously, but it's a good amount to at least do anything you want. So I thought that would be fun. I had no idea. I miss having the manual transmission, but I really like having the auto, so I don't know where I'd go with that. If you could somehow adapt a 6, 8, 10 speed auto to a 1FZ, I think that'd be cool. Maybe do a stroker, maybe combine with some turbocharging or something. I don't know. I think that'd be fun. Nothing crazy, just good solid power. That'd be fun. But I like my 60. I've got it set up about how I like it or how I want it. We just added some Dobinson MRR shocks to it, and after a month of not deciding if I love them or hate them because they have so much adjustability, I think I finally got them to a sweet spot, and I really like that. And it's a blast to bomb around in. So right now I'm focused on building my dream truck with my 60. I'm going to get some nice seats for it. I got some carpet. I'm going to put some sound deadening, and I've got a whole body mount kit or a whole set of body mounts. And I thought about using that experience to offer a body mount kit on the website if it turns out people are looking for something like that. So now I'm going to be daily driving my 60. So I'm turning it into my dream vehicle. So, well, not dream vehicle, but with what I've got. So I always miss the power windows and door locks. So maybe I'll figure out a way to, get a 62, graft the 62 guts in there or something, but I'm having fun with that.
I don't know about those 62 guts. I mean, I like the electric windows in the 62.
Well,
they have that old school slow roll down.
We'll put some extra power to them or something.
Yeah.
We are getting a little low on time here, but was wondering if you've had any influential cruiser heads out there that you've learned from, looked up to, that you have, a story about or want to share a piece about?
Man, it's hard to just say one person in particular because there's so many. Nowadays, most of the people I look up to are probably fellow shop owners because I can really appreciate the challenge. So George has been a huge help. Even before I was doing that, like when I started the swap in my truck, he was very helpful in kind of setting a direction and helping me make some decisions. And when I went to the Rubathon, I stopped by his shop and he crawled under just to double check my work and make sure all my bolts were tight. And I bought some extra drive shafts from him because I just knew I would need them, or I knew that if I had them, I wouldn't need them. So,
right.
But I stopped by there. He's been great. Tor was a big help. Gave me a lot of advice when I added Drew and decided to add extra people, which adds a whole new dynamic to running a business. He's been a big help, and I've just so many other shop owners. I won't even name anymore because there's just so many. But there's this. We all talk to each other. I don't think any of us see each other as competition. So it's a whole nother friends group and network out there that's been great. Just bouncing ideas and trading work and sending people that are a better fit somewhere else. Just so I'm not sure I can pick a single person out there. So
Nice.
all those guys.
That's fair.
It's great to hear that even, in the business side of like the Land Cruiser community, there's still a lot of, being very, there's mentorship, there's some of these other kind of collaborative parts, which is what we see a lot in, a lot of the clubs and a lot of the individual kind of get-togethers and events and stuff like that. So it's great to hear that is like continuously permeated throughout the entire.
For sure, and it's my relationship with the Land Cruiser community has changed because, like, when I had a real job and I had time to surf mud and do my own builds and document everything, and my time was free, right? It was my hobby, it was my escape. And now it's like I don't have free time and I don't get the chance to interact with everybody as much. And now I'm having to do all the stuff that we were dreaming about. So and try and run a business and keep it going, and it's added a whole different dynamic. So it's been real interesting. It's been a lot of fun.
So, who would be another, member in the community that, you really looked up to or inspired by that you think we should, talk to next?
I would definitely say either George or Tor. I kind of loosely have followed these guys when they were. I think a lot of these guys follow a similar path where maybe you don't start out at home, like working out of your home garage, although a lot of people do, because it's hard to make a jump. Into just starting a business from scratch. Like I did it incrementally, like a step at a time. But I've watched these guys start from a shop that's, about the size of this place, and they now have real operations that continue to run year in and year out, which is, you can kind of watch the cruiser shops. If they don't last if they don't make it the first couple of years, then they're not going to make it. But the people that make it the first couple of years usually kind of figure it out, and those guys have done great. Duck at Dougie's Garage, I've been kind of watching him too. So any of those guys, I would love to watch and get their perspective.
Nice.
That's my latest build, is this shop and business. I don't get to work on my own truck anymore, so it's my latest project. So, yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed that build thread as like kind of the business has grown and whatnot. I think that there was one question here I didn't get to ask, so we'll have to try and set up another time at some point. Just talking about more things. So we'll come back around and try and get some more time with you. And hopefully
Absolutely.
we'll get to continue to see some amazing projects come out of there, and hear more perspective of the Land Cruiser community as it evolves with your business and whatever passions you have.
Definitely. I love what you guys are doing too. You're doing the same thing, just following what you enjoy doing, and this is awesome.
Yeah, it's been great. We really appreciate you taking the time on your busy schedule, and I know it's really late, on your side of the country there. So
I know I had to make a cup of coffee here. I got a beer and a coffee here, so it's almost my bedtime. So
Oh, geez. Well, we really appreciate
But
it.
it's
I'm sure
Friday,
everyone
so
else
I'm
does. Thank you.
glad to join. So,
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Cam. Thanks everybody
all
else
right,
for
guys.
watching.
Great to see you. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.